Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the small, tight-knit town of Maplewood, nestled between sprawling forests and quiet hills, the summer of 2015 was turning out to be particularly hot. Families sought refuge in their air-conditioned homes. But as the days dragged on, a sense of foreboding settled over the community like a thick fog. The whispers of summer barbecues turned into hushed conversations, all revolving around an unsettling truth: something was amiss. On the morning of July 12th, a local jogger stumbled upon a gruesome scene. Seraphine Monroe, a beloved schoolteacher and pillar of the community, lay lifeless in a secluded, wooded area known for its tranquil beauty. The sun filtered softly through the thick canopy above, yet the vibrant greens and dappled light did little to soften the raw reality of the situation. Panic rippled through Maplewood, shattering the quaint veneer of safety that had enveloped the town for decades. The news spread quickly. A shockwave of disbelief crashed over the residents, many of whom had always felt a sense of invulnerability in their little slice of paradise. With few leads and even fewer clues, the local police department quickly realized they were in over their heads. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a potential nightmare lurking in the shadow. Unbeknownst to them, the investigation would lay bare the fractures hidden beneath Maplewood's peaceful surface, exposing secrets that would entwine the lives of its residents forever. As families locked their doors a little tighter and mothers called their children inside earlier than usual, the search for Seraphine's killer began. It would soon become apparent that not everyone in the community was as they seemed. The victim. Seraphine Monroe was not just a name whispered in hushed tones around town. She was a beacon of warmth, intelligence, and compassion. At 32 years old, she had spent nearly a decade as a first-grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary School, where her bright smile and nurturing spirit drew children to her like moths to a flame. Like moths to a flame. Parents praised her patience and innovation, often claiming she had a unique ability to see the world through the eyes of her students. On the day she was found, Seraphine had been preparing for what she had excitedly dubbed the Summer Learning Adventure, a program designed to keep her students engaged outside the traditional classroom setting. She was a firm believer that a love for learning should extend far beyond the school year, a philosophy that reflected her own infallible zest for life. Friends recalled her ambitious plan-shaking trips, library scavenger hunts, and even art workshops in the park. To know Seraphine was to admire her boundless enthusiasm. Yet beneath her resplendent exterior, Seraphine battled her own demons. Friends noted how, despite her vivacity, she often wrestled with episodes of loneliness that left her feeling vulnerable. And exposed. Unlike the confident figure she portrayed in front of others, at night, she would sometimes sit alone in her cozy living room, replaying moments of the day, grappling with unvoiced insecurities. The news of her death sent shockwaves through the community. But even more disturbing was the revelation that not everyone admired her as much as they claimed. In the days that followed, as the investigation unfolded, her friends and family found themselves puzzled by the emerging complexity of Seraphine's life secrets and tensions that hinted at a darker side to the idyllic town. They thought they knew Saw. Well, as whispers of hidden resentments began to fill the air, one question became paramount. Who would want to harm the woman they all claimed to love? The crime scene. When Detective Mark Sullivan arrived at the crime scene, the distant sound of his patrol car echoed through the tranquil woods of Maplewood. Outside the perimeter set by uniformed officers, a crowd of curious onlookers had formed whispers and gasps, breaking the otherwise serene atmosphere. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting an elongated shadow that danced eerily upon the forest floor, where Seraphine Monroe's life had been cut tragically short. As he stepped into the clearing, Sullivan's senses sharpened. The beauty of the surroundings, with their vibrant wildflowers and fluttering leaves, starkly contrasted the grim reality before him. Seraphine lay sprawled on the ground, her once bright clothing now dulled by the dirt and debris. Initially, the scene was chaotic. Police tape fluttered in the gentle breeze, and officers were busy preserving evidence while collecting witness statements. Bending down for a closer look, Sullivan noticed the signs of a struggle: a broken branch, fresh tire marks imprinted in the soil, and the faintest trace of blood on the lush grass beneath her. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. It was clear this had not been a mere accident. Someone had taken her life with malice. As forensic teams sifted through the scene, Sullivan began to establish a timeline. Witnesses reported seeing Seraphine jogging nearby around noon, wearing her favorite bright blue tank top. She was exceptionally punctual. Absences were rare for a trait respected by both colleagues and students alike. His thoughts raced as he considered who might have different motives, feelings perhaps left unspoken, while investigators gathered crucial evidence. Sullivan struggled to shake the image of Seraphine's vibrant smile, the twinkle in her eye, as she engaged with her students, now forever extinguished. As dusk fell, so too did a heavy fog that rolled in from the woods, shrouding the scene in mystery. Determined, he made a silent vow. He would find the truth, no matter where it led him. The town deserved that much. The early investigation. The first few days following Seraphine Monroe's murder felt like a slow churn of emotions in Maplewood. Detective Sullivan had prioritized interviewing those closest to the victim first, knowing that in tight-knit communities, the simplest acquaintances could yield the most profound insights. Early leads were scarce, and the pervasive tension in the air thickened with each passing hour, a collective unease that wrapped around the town like a heavy blanket. Among the first to be interviewed was Claire Thompson, Seraphine's closest friend and confidant. Claire's red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands attested to her distress. And as she spoke, the warmth in her voice held an edge of confusion. Seraphine was just well, always so bright, Claire said, struggling to mask her grief. She had plans, dreams. I can't imagine who would want to hurt her. Sullivan's notepad filled with potential leads and connections, as Claire shared snippets of their recent conversation show. Seraphine had mentioned feeling uneasy about a stranger lurking near the school, and that a tense exchange had recently transpired with a fellow teacher. Speculation lingered on the peripheral, laced with half-formed thoughts about jealousy, rivalry, or perhaps even unrequited affection. Next came the scrutiny of the forensic evidence. The scene had been meticulously raised for fingerprints and biological samples, but what detectives were really searching for were the clues that could stitch together the fabric of Seraphine's final moments. A shattered cell phone screen recovered from the bushes, a sign of a frantic call, or struggle perhaps. Meanwhile, her car left abandoned, at the edge of the trail yielded further intrigue. Detective Sullivan scoured the glove compartment for personal effects, but his attention was particularly drawn to a half-open bag of teaching supplies, alongside an unopened letter with a striking red wax seal. These first steps into the investigation were only beginning to unravel the complex tapestry of Seraphine's life. Had she been involved in something deeper? Something the town couldn't begin to fathom? That question lingered as Sullivan gathered the pieces, acutely aware that they were treading into dangerous waters. Without answers, the town's tranquility may remain forever shattered. The dead ends. As the investigation progressed, hope flickered like a dying ember. With each lead that fizzled out, Detective Sullivan felt the weight of unanswered questions pressing heavily on his chest. The townspeople, who had once buzzed with theories of their own, were slowly beginning to close off, retreating into the shadows of suspicion. Whispers of doubt flitted between friends and neighbors. Truly knew Seraphine well, and who had masked their disdain behind a smile. Days turned into weeks, and the forensic team processed the data extracted from Seraphine's phone. Sullivan learned that the cell service records did indicate a series of strained calls made to an unknown number, a connection that, distressingly, seemed to lead nowhere. Every inquiry made yielded only a blank stare. No suspicious number, no sudden conversation turned aggressive. Just a worm of frustration that gnawed at the heart of the investigation. His next target was Amira Reddick, a fellow teacher considered a frenemy of Seraphine's, known for her fierce competitiveness. Both had vied for a coveted position at the local education board. And on the surface, Amira's stoic demeanor and tightly sewn lips hinted at buried rivalries. Sullivan felt a spark of optimism building as Amira agreed to meet, but the conversation quickly dampened. I respected Seraphine. She was talented and loved by the kids, Amira insisted, her gaze unwavering. Jealousy? No. We were professionals. That's all. But beneath her unwavering composure, Sullivan detected a flicker of something else: irritation. Frustration, he pressed. But his questions only led him in circles. And when he left their meeting, he had more layers of uncertainty and clarity. Pervasive dead ends emerged during each subsequent interview. The community offered glimpses of personal struggles and hidden grievances that were ultimately futile to investigate. Even as he unraveled the intricate web of Seraphine's life, her friends whispered of secrets they dared not speak, retreating rather than confronting the painful truth. Surrounded by a rising tide of doubt and festering suspicion, Sullivan felt increasingly isolated. With each passing week, the case loomed larger than himself, threatening to consume not just his career, but the integrity of a town that had once felt so secure. The tension thickened, now laced with resolve. He knew that buried within those dead ends, hidden amidst layers of pain, lay the fragments of a truth he was determined to uncover. A break in the case. One sweltering afternoon, weeks after Seraphine Monroe's murder, a breakthrough emerged unexpectedly from the flood of frustration and dead ends. It came in the form of a seemingly innocuous phone call to Detective Sullivan from the local pawnshop owner, Frank Maplewood. Sullivan had always kept a keen eye on Frank. He was a fixture in the community and known for being in tune with the comings and goings of its residents. Detective, you might want to come down here, Frank's gravelly voice crackled through the receiver. I've got something that could interest you." Sullivan's stomach churned with renewed hope as he made his way to the cramped storefront. The shop was brimming with dusty electronics, faded furniture, and forgotten heirlooms items that spoke of lives lived and lost. Frank stood behind the counter, holding up a silver locket, the chain swaying gently in his hand. The tarnished exterior gleamed with an ethereal glow, one that Sullivan could recognize from a photograph of Seraphine. "It was dropped off last week," Frank said, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "A couple of guys brought it in, claiming they found it in the woods." Sullivan felt his heart race as he examined the locket, recognizing the personalized engraving inside a beautiful inscription that matched Seraphine's handwriting perfectly. "Did you catch their names?" he pressed, steeling himself against the prospect that someone may have stumbled upon crucial evidence. "Of course I did," Frank replied, nodding toward a notepad on the counter. "This kid, he called himself Kyle. Didn't catch the other one's name." A search of the records revealed that Kyle was a local teenager with a history of petty crime, a known troublemaker, with frequent run-ins with the law. Sullivan's instincts sparked to life. If Kyle was indeed involved, he might have seen or heard something more about the evening of Seraphine's death. Drawing on the renewed sense of purpose, Sullivan wasted no time. He invited another officer to accompany him and made his way to the teen's homeic step, building a crescendo of anticipation. They approached the door, and as Sullivan knocked, he could feel the tide turning, a gust of clarity breaking through the disturbing haze that had loomed over the case. The trail had been cold, but now it had finally begun to warm. Determined to find the truth, he braced himself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the shadows cast over Seraphine's tragic end might finally yield to the light of justice. The suspect, Kyle Jensen, slouched against the doorframe, a mixture of defiance and youthful arrogance etched across his features. The faintest hint of surprise flickered in his eyes as Detective Sullivan introduced himself. Sullivan took in the teen's disheveled appearance. Bleached tips of his hair betrayed a need for attention, while the collection of tattoos peeking from under his t-shirt screamed rebellion. But Sullivan wasn't here to judge. He was here for answers. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Sullivan inquired, maintaining a calm authority that belied the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Kyle shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Yet, Sullivan noticed the way his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, small tells that hinted at underlying anxiety. As he led Kyle to the living room cluttered with remnants of teenage life video games, empty food wrappers, and crumpled clothes, a sense of urgency swept over Sullivan. "First off, we received a report that you were in the area near the woods the day Seraphine Monroe was killed," he began, locking eyes with the youth. Kyle's face paled slightly, and for a moment it seemed as if the bravado might crumble. "It's just a stupid dare," he muttered, averting his gaze. "Me and some friends were messing around, trying to scare each other." "Messing around?" Sullivan pressed, leaning forward, the intensity of the moment settling in the air between them. "You brought this back to me." He produced the locket, letting it dangle before Kyle's shifting eyes. Kyle's bravado slipped as panic washed over him. "I found it, all right, in the woods. I thought it was cool, so I took it," he stammered, words spilling out in a rush. "I didn't kill her. I just wanted to show my buddies." "We didn't even see her stop right there," Sullivan interrupted, his voice steady, yet firm. "If you know anything about what happened to Seraphine, now's the time to tell us. This goes beyond a childish prank. You could be in way over your head. Kyle swallowed hard, feigning indifference but visibly shaken. Finally, desperation cracked through his facade. Okay. I heard some stuff that night, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Some guys were talking they were angry about something. I didn't stick around to hear everything. I swear, I didn't mean to get involved. Those words struck like a lightning bolt, igniting a rush of adrenaline within Sullivan. Kyle might just hold the Case.A loose thread that could unravel the entire case. Who were they? Sullivan pressed, a sense of urgency gripping him. Kyle hesitated. He was caught in a web he never intended to weave. But beneath the layers of fear, Sullivan saw a flicker of hope. The path to justice for Seraphine Monroe was beginning to open up a gateway through which the truth could finally emerge. The trial, the atmosphere surrounding the Maplewood courthouse was thick with anticipation as the trial of Ethan Mills commenced, a name that had surfaced during Kyle Jensen's confession as one of the men who had confronted Seraphine Monroe on that fateful evening. The community had gathered, a blend of sorrow, indignation, and a desperate desire to see justice served. For many, this was more than a trial. It was a reckoning. Detective Sullivan sat amongst the spectators, his heart heavy with the weight of the months spent uncovering the truth. Ethan, a man in his mid-30s, sat at the defendant's table, his expression a mask of indifference, cloaked in a tailored suit. But Sullivan knew that behind that stoic exterior lay a sense of entitlement and privilege that felt antagonistic to the very core of the tragedy they were witnessing. As the court proceedings unfolded, the air became taut with emotion, testimony, stretching long into the days like a taut wire ready to snap. Friends and family, once vibrant and hopeful, now offered somber reflections on Seraphine's life and the chasm left in her absence. Witnesses recounted how the once rich laughter that filled the elementary school hallways had been replaced with the echoes of grief and profound loss. Sullivan listened intently as Kyle took the stand, his voice quivering with uncertainty yet unwavering in detail. He recounted the evening of the encounter, how Ethan and his friend had been drinking near the trails, their anger brewing over some perceived grievance. Every word he spoke was doused in the visceral pain of regret. He had never imagined his youthful bravado would lead to such ruin. The defense was relentless, painting Kyle as a reckless teenager with a propensity for troubling a lone wolf seeking attention. Why should we believe you? They shot back. Didn't you take a locket that didn't belong to you? The question hung in the air, an insidious shadow swallowing Kyle's credibility. Still, Sullivan found solace in the prosecutor's insistence on the DNA evidence collected from the scene, matching that of the defendant. Slowly, like the peeling back of an onion, a clearer portrait of the crime began to emerge. Forensic experts testified, tying the threads of that night together until it formed a narrative intertwined with reckless choices and violent actions. As the trial neared its conclusion, Sullivan felt the tension coiling around them, a collective breath held, waiting for the verdict that would determine whether justice would be served or evaded once more. When the jury finally returned, murmurs swept through the courtroom. Guilty. The single word echoed, a thunderous declaration that shook the very foundation of Maplewood. Relief flooded through Sullivan, and within the tears of those in attendance lay a sense of bittersweet closure. They had sought justice for Seraphine Monroe, a gifted teacher who had left too soon, and perhaps now the town could begin to heal. In that moment, as the gavel struck for the final time, Sullivan knew the journey did not end here. It was merely the beginning of a path leading toward reconciliation, truth, and the hard work of rebuilding a shattered community, one step at a time. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, the town of Maplewood gradually began to emerge from the shadow cast by Seraphine Monroe's tragic murder. Although Ethan Mills was behind bars, the echoes of loss reverberated through the community, a lingering reminder of the fragility of life. As the days turned into months, a palpable but painful sense of resilience sparked within Maplewood's residents. Detective Sullivan often found himself returning to the familiar trails where Seraphine had jogged, now marked with memorials and flowers from friends and students alike. The forest had transformed, rendering the serene backdrop of the crime scene a place of reflection and connection. Families came to offer their respects, sharing stories of laughter and love that Seraphine had sprinkled through their lives, creating a tapestry woven with memories. In the heart of town, Maplewood Elementary School decided to honor Seraphine's legacy by establishing a scholarship program for aspiring educators. The scholarship would support young students with a passion for teaching, a chance to foster the very love for learning that Seraphine exemplified throughout her life. Sullivan felt a sense of pride when he learned that the community was embracing change, finding purpose in pain, determined to ensure that Seraphine would not be forgotten. Yet, the aftermath was not without its challenges. As the memories of the trial faded, old wounds resurfaced. Conversations around town, actuated by whispers of suspicion toward those who once stood as pillars of the community. Claire Thompson, Seraphine's closest friend, found herself grappling with anger at Ethan for taking Seraphine away, but also at herself for not recognizing the signs of Seraphine's unease. It was an unsettling revelation that left her feeling isolated. Sullivan made an effort to engage with the family as she attended vigils, spoke at community forums, and listened to the fears that danced in the shadows of their hearts. He encouraged open dialogue, understanding that the path toward healing was paved with expressions of grief rather than silence. He often emphasized the importance of support networks, urging residents to reach out to one another as they began to navigate the landscape of their transformed reality. As autumn descended upon Maplewood, the leaves turned gold, the vibrant hues a stark contrast to the pain still lingering in the air. Sullivan documented his thoughts in the small notebook he carried, aiming to capture every nuanced emotion as a reminder of the journey they had undertaken. The story of Seraphine, intertwined with the lives of the people she touched, had embedded itself into the fabric of the town. Though the journey toward full healing would be long, perhaps a lifetime, for some the seeds of resilience and community were taking root. With each whisper of wind through the trees and each golden leaf that fell, Maplewood held on to the memory of a teacher whose light, though dimmed, continued to shine brightly in the hearts of those she had inspired. And while the scars of the past would never completely fade, Sullivan had faith that through unity, love, and remembrance, they would continue to move forward. Reflection. As the seasons turned, Detective Sullivan found himself reflecting more frequently on the haunting yet transformative case of Seraphine Monroe. The vibrant colors of autumn gave way to the somber shades of winter. But within the chill of the air was a warmth that began to bloom, a resilience he had seen take root within the community. As he strolled through Maplewood, he absorbed the lessons woven into the lives around him. The power of connection, the importance of dialogue, and the inescapable truth that within every tragedy lay the potential for profound change. Every interaction with community members inspired him. Each story he heard strengthened the collective resolve to ensure that Seraphine's spirit lived on. Families who had once been strangers began forming bonds, offering their hands to one another in solidarity. School children held hands as they ran past the newly engraved scholarship plaque in Seraphine's honor, their laughter now tinged with understanding of the preciousness of life. Sullivan often found solace by the riverbank, reflecting on how far the town had come. He understood that healing was neither linear nor easy, but the palpable spirit of hope that flowed through Maplewood offered him reassurance. It wasn't just about having answers set, it was about nurturing an environment where vulnerability could coexist with strength. He thought of Seraphine often, envisioning her sitting in a classroom, surrounded by eager young minds, nurturing them as she had done so many times before. It was a bittersweet reminder of both loss and legacy. She had sparked a movement that transcended her death, igniting conversations of empathy and understanding that would guide the town well into the future. As snowflakes began to drift down from the gray sky, Sullivan promised to keep Seraphine's story alive, both as a tribute to the woman who inspires so many and an unwavering commitment to the truth. Maplewood was forever changed, and so was he, a testament to the indelible impact that one life can have on a community, even in the face of loss. With the hope of better days ahead, Sullivan left the riverbank, refreshed and purposeful. The past would always be a part of him, but rather than anchor him down, it allowed him to soar, a reminder that light would always find a way through the darkest of nights.